Continuing with the video in which I have said about, or I have given a basic overview of what procure to pay cycle in ERP systems was, while considering an example of from SAP Materials Management. While again going into that same video, continuing, uh, you can watch that video or you can watch this video independently to understand what all financial entries could happen in background in an ERP systems while the material management procure to pay cycle is happening. So the steps which are usually included in procure to pay cycle is steps included are supply management, requisition, or it could be purchase order, invoice reconciliation, and accounts payable. So these are the basic steps. To know more, you can go to the website. And saying in a brief overview of what procure to pay cycle is, I have given a long video about this, but again wrapping up quickly, there is a requirement gathering process in which you will identify what all goods you will need for your company. Then you will have a source determination, which is mostly a request for quotation is sent to the different vendors, and based on the best quotation you will select a vendor, and based on that selection of the vendor you will send a PO to the vendor for processing. And then there is a PO monitoring, and once the PO vendor receives the purchase order, which is a formal agreement for supplying the goods, based on that he will send you the goods which you have requested, and with that you will have the goods receipt. And once you are receiving the goods in your company, there is usually a verification will happen at this stage. So this is a verification of goods will happen, or quality analysis will happen here. So this is a important steps where you will check that whatever goods you have ordered, is it according to what you have requested, is the quality according to what you have requested, or the number of goods, number or the quantity is same. If there is a mismatch based on the tolerance limit and the rules of your company, you can choose to not accept the material, and you can choose to send the material back to the customer. That's sorry, send the material back to the vendor, or you can accept that, and you'll have to make certain entries, or financial entries will be done based on the mismatch or based on the tolerance which has happened. So again, there will be an invoice verification. So the vendor will also send a bill or an invoice, and you will have to verify the invoice with the material which you have received. Suppose you have ordered for quantity of 10, but what you have received is a quantity of 9. So there will be, but the vendor has sent a quantity invoice for a quantity of 10. So again you will have to do the invoice verification, and you will have to make certain changes based on the quantity which you have received and the invoice which you have received. So usually there will not be we'll not consider the case where there is a mismatch, but we'll say that consider that you have ordered for 10 quantity and you have received for 10 quantity, and finally you will pay the vendor for the 10 quantity of the material, for example, which you have ordered. So briefly considering what all could happen in an ERP system by simply taking an example of a SAP system. So the purchase order is a step where the formal agreement will happen. So usually while you are entering a purchase order, you will have the price of the material. Suppose for that, for our case, the price of the material could be 100 rupees, and we are having a quantity, and usually other details like vendor, tax code, cost center, profit center, project, etc. will be noted down, or noted down in the purchase order. So this purchase order will also create something known as a commitment in projects or in controlling. So this will be creating a commitment, but there will be no accounting document that is being generated in F5, while a commitment entry will be created in controlling, which will be noted as a commitment to be paid, or a commitment on a project which will affect the budget of the project, or which will consume the budget of the project or the controlling object of so that's a different management ledgers. But if you are saying of financial accounting, there will be no accounting entries which will be created. And the next step is a receipt of the goods. You have received the goods from the vendor. So suppose you had ordered for 10 quantity 100 rupees and the price was 1000. So the inventory will be debited in this case. So the inventory is an account or reserves in this case in SAP or ERP systems. And then your GRIR, which is a clearing account. So these are ledgers or accounts which is like journal entries. So people who don't have much knowledge of finance, I'm also not from finance background, but to have some knowledge, you can say that these will create general entries in ERP systems, or in SAP terms they will be created as GL accounts. So these will create entries in the GL accounts. And the next step is the invoice receipt. So when you are having the invoice receipt, your bill will be received or the invoice will be received. So again the clearing account which was credited during this step will be debited here, and the vendor account, which is again will be a accounts payable GL account, will be credited here. So now you will have to pay the vendor 1000 rupees, while the clearing account, which was used as a clearing account to connect both these, has been offsetted here. It has been debited and credited, while now you have a credit against the vendor, which is that you have to pay the vendor 1000 rupees. And the next step is a vendor payment. So for all these steps you will have the transaction codes or the transactions or the screens which will be used to entry these in the ERP systems. And the next step is you will pay the vendor, and this will be recorded in the ERP system as the vendor will be debited in this case. So the vendor account in the ERP system or the SAP system has been cleared now. So the vendor is debited, and now you have a credit against the bank. So you have credited your bank account with 1000 rupees. So this is a request to the bank, so that this vendor should be paid. Suppose you have an account in a certain bank which is linked to your company, you can send a request to that bank to pay the vendor account. So the vendor will also have a bank account, and you will have the payment from your bank account to the vendor account. So again the next step will be the bank clearing process, which will be happening as part of the periodic process. Once you have received a confirmation from the bank that the vendor has been paid, there will be clearing process. So again I will not cover into detail about how the clearing will happen. If I'll ever cover about the financial parts, then I may make a video about how the clearing process will work into. So the inventory will be credited at the time of supplying goods. So now only the one entry which have been was debited but we have not credited it anywhere was the inventory. The inventory has not been offsetted anywhere, so this will be offsetted as part of the cost of the goods which is sold. No, this goods which has been sold to the customer. So you have procured some goods and you have produced some goods. Again, when you are going to have cost of goods produced, your inventory will be debited while cost of goods produced will be credited, and the price difference can be debit or credit entry. This is again an accounting entry which will happen as part of a transaction. But finally the offset for the inventory will happen as part of the cost of the goods which has been sold. So whatever you are selling, suppose you have made a product and you are selling that product for 1000 or 1100 rupees. So against that your inventory will be credited or debited. So this is the last entry which will usually happen, but this is part of the sales and distribution or sales team, and the most of these entries till here the purchase, goods receipt, invoice receipt will happen in the materials management, and they will be simultaneously integrated with the F5. So this is how the integration of or the financial entries will happen while the procure to pay process is happening in any of the ERP systems. That's all. If you like this video, please do subscribe to my channel. Also do watch other videos in this channel. Also stay updated to get more knowledge, and I'll try to make while this is not very perfect about the kind of videos right now I'm making. Also I'm in process of setting up a studio to make some videos, or setting up a small office space to make some videos in a more professional way. I'm not able to get time to do that, and not in the perfect not getting the perfect place to do that. But still, while I am working around, I'll try to make some videos in the ways possible to explain, and it's not always possible to explain in person. But while I think that if you would have watched this video, it could have interested you if you are somewhere related to this field. But even if you are from engineering background, and if you are not at all knowing anything about ERP, you can watch the other videos which I have uploaded about explaining what ERP systems are all about. And while you are engineering graduate or a student who would be working in any company, then most of the administrative works in the company would be managed by the enterprise systems. And while you will be working in a specific organization, like a materials management team, or usually which is called as a procurement team in a company. And there are other teams like plant maintenance, or maintenance and operation and productions, etc. So even if you are engineering graduate, or you are working in whichever industries like banking or IT sector, or if you are even working in manufacturing companies or service based companies, ERP is something which will be always be going to be used. And by having a basic knowledge of what ERP systems is all about, could help you to have a better understanding. Even when you will be working in the organizations, there could also be the projects team. So even if you are working in those organizations, what knowledge you will be getting will be very specific or very limited to the department which you will be working. Like if you are working in a procurement team, the most of your knowledge will be very much limited to what is happening in the procurement team and this procurement cycle. But while if you will go through ERP videos, which some of the videos I have uploaded, also I'll try to upload some more videos if I get more time, and based on the response of these videos, you could get more information about the whole overview of how different organizations are integrated, or different departments are integrated backend using ERP systems in any organizations. While it might not be directly related to you, this whole thing could be interesting to have a knowledge of how organizations work using ERP. That's all. If you like this video, please do subscribe.